So after a week highlighted by Democratic debates, President Trump finally getting his chance to respond. The president not holding back at a rally in Ohio by unleashing on his 2020 rivals. Trump singling out Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden while also going after their party's progressive policies. Watch.
While Republicans are working every day to build up our country, the rage-filled Democrat Party is trying to tear America apart. The great Pocahontas, who's now lying and cheating her way to the presidency, if possible. She said she was Indian. And I said that I have more Indian blood than she does, and I have none. I'm sorry. For the last 20 years, China's taken hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars out of our country. They would love to see a guy like Sleepy Joe Biden, who has no clue what the hell he's doing. They'd say to Sleepy Joe, "Sir, just sign right there." "Oh, okay."
And the president not backing down in the battle over Baltimore. He instead upped the ante by criticizing how Democrats are running other American cities.
No one has paid a higher price for the far left's destructive agenda than Americans living in our nation's inner cities. We spend billions and billions and billions for years and years and years, and it's stolen money, and it's wasted money, and it's a shame. The conditions in Nancy Pelosi's once great city of San Francisco are deplorable. They're deplorable. Look at Los Angeles with the tents and the horrible, horrible, disgusting conditions. Look at San Francisco.
All right, the president, Emily, seizing back the national conversation after 2 long nights of Democratic debates.
He did indeed. I think it was really wise that he didn't name the squad by their individual names because it removed the ball from their court. The media didn't go running immediately to them to say, "What's your response?" I think it was also smart for him to kind of continue strategically this culture war where he's driving that wedge between the urban and suburban voters. I think it was huge that he highlighted the waste of spending on these inner cities because as the Democrats right now are putting all their policies forth and how much money they're going to dump into continuing to solve or address these problems, he's highlighting all of this money that's going to it hasn't fixed a thing. He should be careful, however, not to alienate those suburban voters that identify with those cities that they live near.
But it is interesting because if the president brings it up, Greg, then the media will talk about it.
Of course.
Like on the cities.
Yes, and that's why they should be thanking him because he's shining a light on a problem that's been around for decades. If you look at any devastated city, chances are you'll see the Democrat machinery behind it. But the big loser from last night was CNN because there was no chant. And they were, you could tell how crestfallen they were when no chant showed up because then what is going to be their primetime lineup? What is Don Lemon going to report on? He might have to do the news. Hard to believe. I think the big contrast is the rally and the debates. So you're witnessing this positive energy, which is actually derived from real data. I mean, like, you can't be happy if the economy sucks. So you're seeing this rally, right? And everybody's having a good time. Then you look up at the stage of Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's a doomsday cult. So on one side, you got Happy Feet. On the other side, you got Soylent Green. And I think that one of them is a delusion. And the data backs up one side. The other side, it's a feeling. So it's data versus a feeling.
Well, it wasn't just the debates, Capri. It really carried into, you had Democratic-leaning pundits or guests writing articles or tweets or even being on air, including Paul Begala, who was on CNN, saying he watched the debates and he felt like basically they were setting up President Trump to win and not doing a good enough job for themselves. Dan Ball's saying that the Democrats put their worst face forward. How do you think the debates went?
Well, I know that this is a topic that's we're probably going to touch upon time and again throughout this hour. But I mean, as a Democrat, it was incredibly frustrating. I'm sure it's probably no surprise to anyone around this table or viewers at home that Tuesday night was more of my cup of tea than the Wednesday evening. Well, because there actually was at least some conversation between the idealists and the pragmatists. You actually did have pragmatists on the stage as opposed to Democrats going after one another on Wednesday evening, which just is not a good look for us and does make us, weak overall. I want to go back to this issue, though, very quickly about the inner cities. It was interesting because, I took a look at this. Out of the 100 top 100 cities, only 30 of those cities are actually have Republican mayors. So the question is this, an issue of correlation or causality with Democrats? Because there's no question that there are big cities with Democratic mayors that are failing. But there are also rural areas that are lagging in everything from, life expectancy to educational attainment and everything else. And as someone who represented a rural area as well as suburban and urban, Democrats, if we paid any attention to rural communities, they are so forgotten. There's so many people out there. If we just paid attention to them,
but it's interesting because conservatives also, Brian, on the flip side, they also say if we would just pay a little bit of attention to the urban areas, they could see. And to Greg's point, he's made it before, not necessarily on this show yet, but if you have both parties working together or at least competing against each other within a city, but if you have one party rule in either way, it doesn't work.
It would be good if both parties ignored Brian.
Okay.
Right. Both parties ignore. Yeah, I go for the independents.
Yes.
I go for them. And the Raelians in terms of religious sect. Couple of things. Emily, what you said is right. I believe that when the president pointed out not naming the names is correct. When the president goes ahead and says urbans are the problem, look who's running these cities, look who's in charge. Right. But the president's got to go to the next step. Tell me what you do. Don't just say, look how bad these cities are. Give these people hope. And maybe the hope is the opportunity zones, because I hear they are producing results. Ben Carson's his worst PR agent. He's doing a lot of great things, but he just doesn't know how to get the word out. So now Ben Carson, over the last 3 days, had his finest week of as HSS secretary, HUD secretary, because he's coming out and he's using Baltimore as an opportunity. So, hey, Mr. Ray, let me in charge of Baltimore. I see the potential in the urban areas. I see how people have underwhelming hopes for you, and people have let you down.
Interesting. In the first night of the debates, the Democrats didn't even bring up. They're in Detroit.
Yeah.
And they didn't even bring up cities. But can I ask you one other thing, maybe quickly around the table? The president re-upped his focus on Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
And for Democrats who thought that the scandal of her heritage was behind her, he was reminding everybody about it.
No. That's like he's like Leonard Skinner, and that's his free bird. When he gets out there, he's going to play the hits, and it always works. Can I bring up just one tangential thing? A$AP Rocky is coming back to the United States.
I wish I knew who that was.
Well, what's an interesting story behind this is that he's a rapper who trashed Trump brutally, and the guy who's helping him come back is Trump. And that's an interesting story that people should focus on.
Also, he's coming back because he's innocent, I think.
But, yeah, well, he watched the video. He goes, this guy's gotten a raw deal.
Yeah.
He picked up the phone, called the head of Sweden. He goes, we have to go through a process. Next thing you know, he's about heading home. Kim Kardashian actually picked up the phone and talked to him. And here's the thing about the president. People that get to know him understand, and that I probably didn't make clear to Juan last night, is that people that know him say they know for sure he's not a racist. There's nothing about him that is racist. Sometimes he can be racially insensitive, as Tim Scott pointed out. Here's another example. He sees a person in trouble. He doesn't see a black person in trouble. And that's what people haven't understand. He went after Elijah Cummings because Elijah Cummings went after his Kevin McAleenan. It wasn't because Elijah Cummings is black. That's what people at other networks and other parties have trouble understanding. You don't hurt his feelings because he knows he's not a racist.
And he's going after Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas because at least this is how I think Elizabeth Warren will frame it. He's afraid that, like, all this, every time you get a nickname from President Trump, it means you get some street credibility. You're going to go out and fundraise on it. So, if he's resurrecting Pocahontas as his free bird, I think it's unfortunate. It plays into Elizabeth Warren's hand. I suggest
Emily,
he lay off.
Do you want to make a musical reference before we go to break?
Well, it's just like when I was at the Slash concert the other night and they played Night Train, right? Everyone loved it. It was the loudest the crowd was because it was a Guns N' Roses hit.
I
agree,
if that was
however,
the same Slash.
the president is the president of everyone, right? And so it goes against, unfortunately, the narrative that a lot on the left have clung to, which is, no, he's a racist no matter what. But this example will serve only potentially persuasively to those who are on the fence or who are open to rational reason.
All right.
Dana,
Yeah.
I only hope that if Brian Kilmeade ever gets stuck in a foreign jail, President Trump does not try to intervene.
And doesn't try to look at the video and determine.
I hope he lets it.
Because I have to learn a lesson.
I want you to rot.
Brian, just don't go overseas.